Hello, welcome to this edition of Dirt Talk with Drake York, and we will be doing a post-race coverage from the past couple races that ran in Northern California this weekend. Last Friday at Silver Dollar Speedway, 360 sprint cars were on tap for post-race number one at the Silver Dollar Speedway. Sean Becker in the Many Motorsports 75. That team originally didn't plan on coming to that race. They started the night off on the right foot, earning fast time with a lap of 12.138 for the Shark, Sean Becker. In the main event, however, Tanner Thorson and Rico Abreu would start on the front row. But on lap 2, Andy Forsberg, who started 7th on the field, worked his way up to the front and would lead lap number 2. Although a lap later we'd have a yellow including Kenny Allen and Sean Becker. Allen was able to return, but unfortunately that crash would end Becker's night. Andy Forsberg was fantastic on the restarts. Once he came off at turn number 2, everybody behind him was a long shot back. On lap 10, however, Rico Abreu and Tanner Thorson, who were battling very, very hard for that second spot. Abreu caught a rut in the middle of turns 3 and 4, hopped and skipped and slid off the edge of the racetrack, exiting turn number 4. That would be an end to Rico's bid for the win, but he would come back and get a top 10 finish after that. Everybody was on the bottom. The track was kind of rutted up just a little bit, and everyone was on the bottom, so that kind of made it hard for Andy Forsberg to lap some cars because he was making the bottom work to perfection. And he would get caught up behind a few lap cars during that race, and those would slow his progress a little bit. And Mason Moore, who came all the way from the B main event, got his time back behind some of the other cars. He would run up to second, and when Forsberg had those troubles with the lap cars, Moore would close in, but Forsberg got around those lap cars, and he would come by to take the win. Mason Moore was second. Tanner Thorson came home third. Thorson was your pole sitter that night. Good run for this driver, Ryan Robinson. He got fourth. Good to see Robinson up at the front of the field. And Caleb Henry, another top 5 in the 18 car. Moving on to Cycleland Speedway, they had their season opening race with the Jim Shirley Memorial, a non-points event. We had all the regular divisions there: beginner box stock, 250 intermediate, open intermediate, and sportsman. In the opening race, Casey McLean, who drove for QRC, or Factory QRC, all winter up at the Red Bluff Outlaws, showed up to Cycleland, piloting the Truck Shop Motors Arrive and Drive T2 car. McLean would lead the opening laps as yellows were littered all throughout the race. Landon Brooks, the defending Open champion, would make a run up to second early, but after a yellow on lap 8, Landon Brooks would pull into the infield. Casey McLean by far was one of the best cars. Holly Shelton, USAC National Midget star, made a return to Cycleland Speedway. She was the defending Jim Shirley Memorial winner. She'd make her presence known pretty early as she battled for second with Jaden Bartlett after Brooks pulled off the track. Her and Bartlett exchanged some of the greatest sliders I've ever seen at Cycleland Speedway until Bartlett got in the back of Shelton, spun Shelton coming off of turn 2 right in the middle of the track. Holly got clipped, and that would be an end to her night. But after that, Casey McLean, who was leading the main event, the car stuttered coming off of turn number 4. The car regained power once more, but once it did, Casey Smits in the Ed Brown Trucking number 35 made his way up to the lead. Those two, McLean and Schmitz, exchanged the sliders after a yellow flag near the end of the race, but McLean's charge back to the front would not be enough as Casey Smits picked up the season opening race at Cycleland Speedway. Also in the 250 race, I want to give a shout out to this kid. Carson Perkins drove one of the best races I've ever seen in a 250 at Cycleland Speedway. The kid did everything perfect, but unfortunately a chain popped off right as he crossed under the white flag, and he would slow to a stop off turn 2, and Dawson Hamas would come by and pick up the win. But Carson Perkins, I feel like as long as he runs at Cycleland Speedway, he's going to be a threat. In qualifying, Perkins would do double duty as he would run the 250 car as well as the open intermediate. In open intermediate qualifying, Perkins was faster than any of the drivers in the open class. So Perkins, I feel like if he gets to run a lot of races at Cycling Speedway, we could see a lot of wins from him. Also, in the box stock class, we had 2 winners, believe it or not. Cycling Speedway now doing an engine change for box stock. So gone is the Subaru Spec engine, and now they're replacing it with a Briggs & Stratton Animal. A few teams decided to run the Subaru engine. About only 3 or 4 of them, I believe. Out of those few cars that ran the Subaru engine, Eric Botel in the 2B won against those engines. In fact, he won the main event, beat all the Subarus and Briggs & Strattons, but the winner in the Briggs & Stratton main event was the 29 Chevy Char. Now you got to remember, they ran both of these cars together. It's pretty much the same engine. So ran the 2 engines against each other, and those are just the 2 different winners. They scored them separately, so just in case if there's a little confusion about that. And on Saturday in Placerville, the Sprint Car Challenge Tour would open up its 2nd season of racing in California. And it would be Mitchell Faceno picking up the big win, as he would lead most of the race's laps throughout that main event. 5H of Michael Kofoid would make a few charges at Faceno throughout the main event, but all of them would fall up just a bit short, as Faceno would go on to take the win. Faceno, as I mentioned, won. Michael Buddy Kofoid ran home 2nd in the Van Dyke Motorsports 5H. Brad Sweet, World of Outlaws Craftsman Sprint Car driver, was driving for Rod Tyner in the 83 SA. He picked up the 3rd spot. Kyle Hurst, defending Sprint Car Challenge Tour champion, began his title defense in a good way as he came home 4th. And rounding out the top 5 was the 22 of Sugar Shane Golobic, who was also that night's fast time qualifier. The track did not allow for much passing, but the driver that earned the Hard Charge Award passed 10 cars in the 42X. That is TK Tim King, the Pit Stop USA Hard Charger Award winner. Also, Marysville Raceway had a ton of divisions on tap. As in the 360 sprint cars, William Fielding would pick up his first 360 sprint car win. Glad to see Fielding get a win at Marysville. I believe it's he's been racing for 6 years and finally gets that first win at Marysville. In the dwarf cars, I believe something crazy like 30 cars showed up at Marysville. In the end, it would be Kevin Bender getting the win. In the crate sprint cars, Jeff Macedo would clean sweep the entire night to pick up the win in the main event. And in the super stocks, Eddie Gardner would be the winner. Well, I'm so glad you joined us for this edition of Dirt Talk with Drake York. Stay tuned, and I'll see you at the races.